Hello and welcome to today's episode of Rich, Simple, Human. I'm Lindsay Francis, and today I'm sitting down with Dr. Nicole Nasr to talk about all things help, therapy, counselling, and online support. Nicole, we're about to dive into quite a deep journey, and I use the word journey because you are, of course, the founder of the platform The Journey Starts Here. Clever little segue in. And I'm going to start by asking you to explain a little bit about the platform, because you are a counselling psychologist with a heart for community, connecting other people, and making support as widely available globally as possible. So, Nicole, welcome to the show. Can you give us a bit of an
Thank you.
overview about your current mission, please?
Of course. I love the introduction that you just gave because it's really been my life mission. I think since I was like 3, 4 years old, it has always been about empowering other people. And the way that I have always supported, whether even my clients, my friends, has always been through that sort of empowerment process. So when I started thinking about creating Journey, which was a very big step, and it still continues to be a very big journey for me because going from being a therapist, a psychologist, having done that, for the past decade and more, and to turn into a founder, an entrepreneur, you really have to have a proper mission and you really have to be dedicated to that mission. And my mission has been quite simple, is that if I want to empower other people, and my main goal is, to try and empower as many people as I can, well, I'm going to have to then need to empower the people that empower other people. And these are, anyway, for me, therapists and coaches. And Journey is this platform that really focuses on the growth, the personal and the professional growth of therapists and coaches. For the main reason that usually once we finish our training, we don't necessarily get that type of support where someone, sits with you, brainstorms with you on some of the things that you can do that is outside of the one-on-one sessions. And I wanted Journey to be this type of companion that therapists and coaches can have while they're going through their professional journey.
Absolutely beautiful. And thank you on behalf of every therapist and coach that's already involved in the platform for the work that you're doing. Because I've explained to you, and we've talked before, that there's a real discomfort in the necessary, let's call it sales and marketing of a business, and the deep passion and desire that you have to work with people one to one. And my work is primarily one to one with founders, leaders, and investors. And that's when the magic happens. The bit that is the grind, of course, is the administration, the pipeline, the promotion, and the identity. So thank you for being so bold in what you're doing. And like you say, bringing us all together, because a rising tide lifts all ships. And this really is important now within the light of the mental health crisis, that we do have people accessing the services and support that they need. So thank you again. Nicole, in the work that you're doing, I know that you're leveraging technology, and we've talked a little bit about AI therapy. And I was recently enjoying an article in the Rolling Stone magazine about people using Chat GPT as a therapist, and it building a real strong sense of narcissism and self-indulgence. It was a humorous article, not that this is to be taken lightly, but it did explore really the dangers of having a non-human entity engaging in these sorts of deep dives. Nicole, can you tell us what you think about AI therapy and where this might be going in the marketplace?
I think the first thing that we need to rectify here is that I don't think it's wise enough to call it AI therapy, right? And to be fair, I've been meeting with a lot of these platforms that really pay attention to not calling themselves therapists, a therapy chatbot. It's usually they put it more around, it's a mental health companion, a support, an entity with what you can, go through certain reflections and ask questions and all that. And there are two things here. Number one, there are not enough therapists and coaches in the world to attend to everybody. That is simply a fact. When I was doing my pitch deck for Journey for investors, I had to come up with a rough number of how many of how many of us there are in this world. And the rough number was 1.5 million therapists and coaches to cater for a planet of billions. And that just goes to show you how we do need help, we do need support. So many of us have waiting lists that are, you know, through through the roof. Am I good to continue? Yeah.
Yeah, please do. Sorry.
So it's okay. So many of us have waiting lists that are going through the roof. People are unable to access also therapy and coaching for the main reason that, I mean, let's face it, it's also a very expensive service. So having these AI chatbots or agents that are there to at least offer a first layer of support for people, I think that is a great idea. Now, the danger comes when those AI platforms um, portray themselves as therapists. Because the role of a therapist is so much more than just explain, it's a lot more than psychoeducation. It's a lot more than giving you perspective taking and sharing some sort of wisdom. It is that, and a very big part of it is that. And also, let's face it, a lot of therapists just stop at that. But proper therapy, the kind of therapy that will move everything inside of you, is a lot more than that. It's being able to know when to challenge. There's an art to it, right? An art that AI won't be able to recreate, because you need to be present in that room. You need to pay attention to certain detail. You need to tap into nonverbal communication that is extremely important when you are in the room with your client. So as long as these platforms don't try to replace that in the face of the public, I'm actually fine with it. Now, one of the things that worries me a little bit, and it's something that I wrote about on LinkedIn, and it's been quite interesting because every time I write about AI, that certain post, just goes viral, and people have a lot of things to say. But one of my latest posts was about the 24/7 support that is available for people. And my problem is not with the support part, my problem is with the 24/7 part. Because we as therapists, I mean, obviously, first of all, I do not want to be 24/7 available for my clients. One. Second of all, I cannot be available 24/7. But even if those two things were a yes, it's so important for my clients to know that they have to stand on their own 2 feet at some point. That support is not always there, because in that way they're encouraged to change. They are encouraged to look inwards and to dive a bit deeper. Now, that is not to say that there have been moments where so many of my clients in between sessions have needed an extra support. Sometimes they'll email me. Some of them, might have like my phone number. They'll send a message. Some other times, I'll refer them to like a certain book or a podcast for that kind of like support. But that is not to say that they haven't needed that. But if I was there all the time, available to come and rescue them, I'm not doing anybody a favor here. The whole point is that you find that what we call this inner wisdom, this voice inside of you that has all the answers. I have so many clients, sometimes they'll be like, I can't make that decision. I need to speak with Nicole. I need to speak with my therapist before making that decision. What you're basically saying here is that you need to speak with this entity that has this inner wisdom, that has this wisdom. And I often say, that happens to be, me and my voice. But the whole point of therapy is that you start nurturing this inner wisdom that you have. But if AI is always available, that anytime I'm about to make a decision, that anytime something happens, I literally just take my phone and I start typing something, and I have this back and forth with a platform, an AI, an agent. What does that do to my own sense of self? What does that do to my own abilities to rescue myself, to attend to my own needs? That is the point. And this is something that I'm always a little bit worried about, is that whoever is developing these platforms, are they aware of that? Because it's very, I think it can become a very fancy concept to say, and we're there, 24/7, anytime, any day. And from a business and sales perspective, it's really attractive to have that. But from a human perspective, are we doing this the ethical way? And these are the types of questions that I'm trying to ask these platforms.
I think it's incredibly nuanced and very complex as a conversation, and I absolutely agree with you. Your statistics are spot on. there is not enough human support out there for the level of suffering or need. And I'm intrigued to look at some numbers in comparison to some work I was doing yesterday, because as you know, and listeners will know, I track all of my clients with Whoop or a wearable device. I use biometrics to track behavior change using the sophrology method. There are over 150 million Whoop and Aura users in the world. That's excluding Garmin. Yet there are only 1.5 million coaches or therapists. Isn't that interesting, the take up, that people are quite keen to say, yes, I'll just put this device on because I can then see what's going on the inside. So there is a demand there. You're right, and people do want to leverage technology. We'd be crazy not to. But at what point do we then say, okay, I have the agency and the personal responsibility to make these changes and do this myself? And we've already got to the point where we're not cooking for ourselves like we used to. We don't perhaps do our laundry like we used to. We don't clean our homes, maybe, if we're fortunate. We outsource so much. We can't outsource our mental health and our inner wisdom. It doesn't work like that.
I'm also going to add to this that you have leveraging technology has to be for a better use. So for me, it's always dangerous when someone that I'm gonna use the word lazy, but I don't necessarily agree with the term, or someone that is more of an avoider or a procrastinator or a perfectionist or whatever. To use, if it's to use technology and not cook and not do all that stuff, for me to spend more time in front of the TV, no. But if it's using technology, not necessarily cooking all the time and doing all that stuff because I'm focused on something that is helping me grow more. I'll give you a super simple example. Like yesterday, I had 1 hour for myself, and it was either I was going to cook dinner for my husband and I, or I was going to spend it meditating for a whole hour because I hadn't done my meditation of the day. And that was my choice. Both of them are rewarding, but one of them was very much needed for me, which was the meditation. And we both made a decision to just order food on that, instead of cooking dinner. So it's not that I use that extra hour to do something that was not enriching me. And that is also not to say that everything that I have to do has to be enriching. Sometimes, watching TV and, dying on your couch has also a very important function. But my problem here is that it's going to sound so awful, but I don't trust humans fully to make the right decisions for themselves. For the simple reason that when you look at history, we have made very, very bad decisions over and over again. We are beings that can easily be tempted. So whether, social media, look at it. I think social media used in small amounts, in moderate ways, in smart ways can be incredible. But what have humans done? We spend 4 or 5 hours a day. People have gone through complete extremes. That's the nature of what we do. We don't know how to sit with the discomfort, and we want to fix that discomfort straight away. So AI and getting that kind of, like, again, 24/7 support is a great way for me to not have to sit with my discomfort. Instead of having these conversations within myself or to try to find some sort of stillness, I'll just go and have a machine, entertain it for me. And sometimes it is important. That's why I'm saying, like, it's not black or white. There's the gray area is so important, but in that gray area, people have to be very smart about how they're going to where they're going to land in this gray area. And that is my worry, is that I look at human nature, and I don't fully trust that we all have the discipline to know how to use that stuff. So not only is the AI conversation important for mental health, but it's going to be even more important now to raise awareness with the consumers, the people, those people that don't go to therapy and are using AI for that. We need to be very careful that they know how to use it and to be very moderate in their use of it, the same way that they would if they were in that therapy space.
I mean, I'm smiling to myself, thinking you can see the next blockbuster movie, can't you, coming, where somebody's totally obsessed with their relationship with their AI therapist, and they can't do anything without asking that question, and then they go on a date, and they come back and they think, well, do I like this person or not? So they go into their companion and they start saying, and the companion's dialoguing with them back and forth. Of course, if I was sat in front of you, Nicole, you would say, well, Lindsay, what do you think? And there's that awful therapy silence, isn't there? Where as the patient or client, you're thinking, do I have to answer this? But you're holding that space because the job is for me to think about how I feel. The job isn't for me to then ask the bot. And I think that's such a fundamental experience, that discomfort of being put on the spot and being challenged, and being asked, well, what do you think? And I've had hours and hours of therapy, many different kinds. And I remember some excruciating times where the therapist sits there and says nothing. And you're sat there thinking, should I go home? Can I leave? I'm bored. And listening to the mental chatter. What am I paying you for? This is a waste of time. But my transformation, my personal transformation, has been around learning to hear those voices and able to dialogue with myself, get into right relationship with myself, be inside, explore my internal wisdom, my inner compass. This is
But even in what you just said now, that thought of what am I paying you for? Do you know how important it is to have the courage to voice that to your therapist whenever it is that you feel like you are wasting your money on? Those sessions have been completely transformational. Those sessions where I've had clients come in and say, I pay you to care, literally, I pay you to care, have been the transformative points. There's something in therapy that we call ruptures. Ruptures are so important. When there is a rupture in the relationship, that's when the real work starts happening. So how do you engage in those ruptures with AI? And this is why I am so in awe of those founders that put it in the forefront. We are not here to replace therapy. We're here to support the therapeutic process. We're here to help in the places that sometimes therapy cannot really attend to. Great, great. Let's do that together. But as you were also talking, and I made this note, and you just gave me an idea for a post, is that what is actually AI doing to our gut feeling, to our intuition? These things that are sacred, that are parts of the human, of being a human, tapping into the body and trusting that gut feeling and that intuition. If AI is always there to give you the answer, not AI, if the agent is always there to give you the answer to everything, your this intuition, this gut feeling starts to die off more and more and more and more. And by the way, you could replace that with a mother that is overly present, and just wants to make all the decisions for the children, and children don't know how to operate without it. Any sorts of dependence, any sorts of dependence, whether on a therapist, whether on a bot, whether on a parent, on a teacher, on a book, any sorts of dependence kills that gut feeling and that intuition and that inner wisdom.
I think that word dependency is so key. And it's testing yourself, isn't it? Am I dependent on this? Can I function without it? Can I
Yeah.
function without my phone? We've recently taken I've got teenage children. We recently took another holiday with no devices. They stay at home, we leave. And the anxiety that gets, and the chatter before we do it, and they're used to it now, it's the second time. But there really is a conversation about, can you not live without this? No. Okay, tell me why not. And you can see them thinking, oh yeah, there isn't. It's fine. But we're
There
conditioning
isn't.
ourselves. I can't live
No.
without cold, hot water. I can't live without whatever. I'm a big fan of expeditions. I believe that challenge creates change. Of course, it does. And I mean, you just described that challenge in a therapeutic setting. That's the bit that makes the difference. When you're challenged, how challenging can an AI bot really be? I think sometimes it's giving you the information that you want, or what source is it drawing from?
But even if it is challenging you, don't forget that if you don't like it, you do this. You stop. Whereas if I'm challenging my client inside the room and they don't like it, I mean, again, it's an art, right? It's a fine art between pushing them just enough, but if you're uncomfortable, you can't, of course you can leave, but you know what I mean. There's no way, like, you have to sit with it. You have to confront it. And I'm sitting there with you in that discomfort. If your AI agent is challenging you on the thought and you don't like it, sorry for my language, but fuck that. You just like put it on the side and you're like, bye. I don't
Just
need to use exactly. So that's why I'm saying like that discipline is very important, because if I'm really going to do this with an AI, then I really have to honor that process. And the AI also has to honor that process. But how do you implement that stuff? So again, it's a great supporting tool, but it won't replace. because you need humans to do that. Like that's the whole point of our profession. It's about the human connection. It's just that.
I
It's
agree.
not about the training.
AI can't see if you're sat there, telling AI, well, I feel really miserable and I'm having a terrible day. AI can't see that you're sat there with, a bottle of wine or a packet of 20 cigarettes or AI can't really see that. So there is that human connection that's so important. We could probably do an entire series on this because it's a
Yeah.
fascinating topic and it's only just beginning to have a conversation in the public space. I bought an electric car. Let me give you an example. My car now thinks for me. I no longer seem to need to brake very often. It steers me back if I go over the white line. It does all sorts of things. It's highly irritating because I'm quite a controlling person and I like to be in charge of my car. I don't like the fact that my car now seems to be in charge of me. So I've turned as much of it off as possible. But what we're doing is outsourcing the bits that make us human, and we need to know where that line is. The same with parenting, cooking, anything else that we want to do. We need to find out where the line is, and yeah, it's fascinating, Nicole, isn't it? And I'm excited that you're bringing that to the public domain. Speaking of public domain, you have over 40,000 followers on your Instagram, over 20,000 on your TikTok, and you really are the social media superstar of the therapy world at the moment. Thank you very much. But as I said to you, I too do love to share my work widely, but there is a real sense of vulnerability that comes with that. Nicole, in yourself, how did you make the decision to be public about what you're doing, and what's been the biggest challenge in doing that for you?
It's I wouldn't be able to answer that as I'm still going through it, you know. But what has happened is that so those followers that you're talking about, those 60,000 followers on TikTok and Instagram, are for the journey page. And when I moved, so just to give you a bit of a timeline with Instagram, in 2021, I made the decision to start doing these videos for Instagram. I had a page, it was literally just called Dr. Nicole Nasr. I had a page pre-COVID where I was just doing psychoeducation, okay, but never with a video. It was always like, you know, reposting certain things, graphics and stuff like that. And I remember I never had one single client referral that came through that. And I did that for like a whole year and a half. In February of 2021, I I I took my courage in my two hands and I'm like, all right, let's start putting your face on Instagram and just do the same psychoeducation, but you explaining it. And in the space of 9 months, I got 36 referrals, knowing that my Instagram page at the time, I think I had somewhere around 2,000 followers. So it wasn't massive at all. When that happened, I was like, whoa, like there really is something about clients being able to see your face, to see how you speak, to see how you dress, to see your mannerism before they commit to therapy. And what was super interesting as well in that, I mean, I do have a really good retention rate. So very rarely do I have clients that sign up and then they just stop after a session or two. And this was, you know, even during my training, I had really good retention rates. So I know that I'm good with connection and all. But what was so interesting is that all of these clients, from the first point of contact, they stayed with me. I mean, I work long term, so they've stayed with me for at least a year or two. And what was so interesting is that they just knew that I was the right therapist for them just from engaging on Instagram. Nowadays, very rarely will I personally go to a restaurant if I haven't checked their Instagram page before. So there is the consumer, whatever the consumer is consuming, whether it's a certain service, whether it's a product, whatever it is, they want to get a feel of who you are and what you are and what they can expect before they enter the session. That it we cannot fight that. This is where the world has taken us today. So what I try to do with Journey and with every member's profile is that we really try to dig very, very deep into who you are as a practitioner. So as a therapist or as a coach. If you and I are both practicing in the same approach, I can guarantee you that what a client gets from my session versus yours is going to be completely different. So those journey profiles, you have the ability to put a video, you have certain prompts. It's like a bit of a Hinge meets, you know, like Tinder meets like, but you know, for therapy and for and for coaches. But the whole point is that people want to know more about you as a therapist and as a coach. Now, so that's on the professional aspect. So those very boring profiles of I'm a counseling psychologist, I'm empathetic. When you work with me, it's very collaborative and I'm not judgmental. And I mean, these are great things, but these are for granted. Like, of course I have all these assets. Like hence I wouldn't be a therapist if I didn't. But when someone looks at 10 profiles in front of them, I want to make sure that they know exactly who they get a real feel of who those people are. And one way of doing that is also, unfortunately, fortunately, through Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, whatever. Now, when there's a very big question that comes into play, and that is the one that I'm struggling with at the moment, is that as a therapist, you have to make a decision of what it is that you want to share and what it is that you want to put out there. One thing that I've noticed, and I think American therapists are very, very good at that, but I think Americans are very good at a lot of things when it comes to like business, self-advertisement, putting themselves out there. They're great at it. Now, what I've noticed is that a lot of therapists will go through acting videos. So they'll act certain things. And when you're acting, there is a sense, a little bit of a vulnerability, when you're putting yourself out there, when you're doing something funny, when you're making like certain faces and all of that. And I realized like, because my social media manager was like, can you do like some acting videos where you're just like doing X, Y, Z? And I was like, no, no, I'm not. I am not doing that. And as a result, we actually hired an actress that will do. I'll tell her like, please, let's try to do these kind of faces. This is what. But I told my social media, I'm not doing the acting stuff. It doesn't feel right for me. It feels weird, and I don't necessarily want my clients to see me in that kind of way. Now, as I'm a founder as well. And the problem with being a founder, not the problem, I mean, one of the things that comes with being a founder is that people want to know your story. People want to know the behind the scenes of a brand and of a platform. And that is something that I'm still struggling with because I'm like, I, yes, I am a founder, but I'm also still the therapist of certain clients. How do I feel posting a picture of my Saturday night where my clients can see, let's say, that I spent my whole weekend surrounded with friends, with my husband, doing really nice, fun things when they are struggling with their social life. When they are, so every time I post something, I always have my clients in mind. And it's such a tricky thing because you're there's no books about that. If anything, it says the complete opposite. Freud would have liked my whole wall to be white and for almost my clients to never see my face. Like, no rings, no nothing. So we're clearly moving away from this. But what does that then mean for that self-disclosure? Because I will self-disclose in sessions. They all know about my husband. I will share a thing or two about like where I am in my life. Of course, if it fits, if it's appropriate. This is not about me just sharing random stuff. But when it comes to that, it has to be such a big balance of what feels comfortable and you paying attention to also how your clients are responding to that. I remember I had a client one time, he was like, you didn't post anything for a whole like week. I was away on vacation. He's like, you didn't post anything. And I got worried. I was like, where is she? So like he would go and do that. I had another client one time I posted that I was a bit sick. So then my client came the next session and I was like, how are you feeling? Are you feeling better? And I was like, oh my God, what a nightmare. Now I have my clients taking care of me because I shared something about my physical, and it's not right or wrong. It's just it's new, it's weird, it's different. And I say this to my supervisees, you have to be very solid and confident in your skills as a therapist to be able to start exploring in these different kind of ways because there's going to be so much countertransference that is going to happen. Transfers and countertransfers that is going to happen in that space. How are you going to handle that?
I think
And it's hard.
such a good question, and I'm really looking forward to the journey training on how you manage that personal branding from a therapist perspective, because I straddle two spaces as well. the founder of the emotional wealth creation method in a clinic, private practice as well. And you're right. How can you be sharing some things that other people are really struggling with? And it feels almost quite wrong and sometimes slightly insulting. But the reality of the world is that we are creating these personal brands. We are leading with authentic identity, and that's what sells the work that we do. It is an incredibly challenging situation, and the world is moving very, very quickly on this. I think you're right. I decided to podcast because I wanted to share my messaging. That has
Mm.
allowed me to sometimes take a step back because it feels a bit more produced. Um, but I do agree with the social media situation is incredibly complicated. But in the same way, Nicole, somebody may come to you as a client, and you may see what they've posted, or there may be somebody that's known in the public eye. And of course, you've already got an image or a perception of what's going on before they get there. That too is also incredibly complicated. When somebody comes in and you're not coming in with a completely blank slate, you've already got some prior information, you might have something else happening. Is there perhaps a situation where that's happened to you? Not that you can disclose, obviously, clients, but there is that known element sometimes that comes up with public awareness and public exposure.
It's listen, it's such a complicated one with that kind of exposure because even as you were talking, I was like, there's no precedent. No one tells you how to do it, and you can be very much judged by the community of therapists and coaches if you're trying to get outside that box. And that is something that I don't think we talk enough about, is that however much we are not judgmental with our clients and with the people around us, a lot of us, unfortunately, in this profession, can become very judgmental of each other and of our peers and of our colleagues. And for me, and I'm not going to lie about that. Yesterday, actually, I was having this conversation with my husband where I posted something. I was editing a video, and it's a video about, like, how to connect with your body. But I was in Thailand 2 months ago, so I had footage of things that you do in nature. But it's the summer edition, so more skin was showing and more stuff. And then I showed the video to my husband just as a, to get his opinion. And I'm like, how do you find this? Is it a bit too much? And he's like, no, I think it's fine. It's like a line of your bathing suit, but like nothing really shows. Okay, your shoulder, blah blah. And then I told him, I'm like, I'm not even worried about my clients at this point. I'm actually worried about the community of therapists that might see this video and be like, really? Is this really what she's doing? And 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 I was more worried. Yeah, I was just more worried about that perception. And it just makes you realize that that's why I said before, you have to have a lot of experience and a lot of courage and confidence to be able to step a bit outside of this box that your training has created around you. And I actually see this box as a great. So what I've done is that if I was inside the box, now I'm outside of it, but I'm carrying this box as my foundation, and now I'm starting to build on top of it. That's how I got out of the box, but still very much acknowledging it. And I respect our profession so much. So even, when I have a client, let's say, that will send me, because it does happen now, I'll have clients that send me a video on Instagram, and, their profile is there, and I know, like, I can see that their profile is public. It's so tempting. I mean, I would be completely lying if I told you that I haven't seen some of my clients' Instagram pages. You'll click on it, and then you'll see, and you're like, oh my God, this is what their boyfriend looks like. Oh my God, okay, this is the friend that they're not speaking to anymore. And then you're like, suddenly, you start putting stuff together, and then, like, you'll see them put a post about, let's say, one of their parents, but you know exactly how they feel about that parent. And we cannot practice in the way that we used to unless we have really put that world outside. And this is a bit, that's the kind of conversation that I want our community to also have on Journey, is that, all right, guys, like, that is our reality. Let's have the courage to actually say what it is that we want to say here, and not judge each other, and navigate this in a way that honors the profession, honors our clients and the process, but still, we're getting a bit up to date with, like, how the world works.
I think these are fascinating conversations, and I can share from my perspective, Nicole. Sophrology, which is what I'm licensed to practice in Europe, is a protected profession. So there's all sorts of hoops to jump in through there, and
Yeah.
I've also had some very interesting conversations. And one of my podcasts is with a Monaco-based sophrologist about the differences within the sophrology community and that tension. And then back in the UK, I'm registered with the Psychological Society as an organizational psychologist. There's another tension about how you should and shouldn't behave. The reality here is it's important that we do what's right for us and for our clients. And I think also understanding that we have a niche. So you are not the right therapist for everybody, neither am I. I also use biometric trackers. So if my client tells me they feel terrible and I see on their data that they didn't go to bed till 4 in the morning on Sunday morning, that's another dynamic within that conversation because
True.
there is nowhere to hide. We've got the same with insurance policies. People are tracking what's going on in their cars, what you're eating, what's happening with your blood sugar, etc. It's giving us this panel of data as therapists or coaches or advisors that we didn't have access to. And when you
Yeah.
have that information and that data, it's a very different conversation. And
Yeah.
you can, you've got the reality that's before you and being presented to you, and then you've got the information that you can see as well. So we are in changing times. I think this is very
Yeah.
exciting. And anybody that does turn up to a session with me and complains they're tired, I have seen your data. I do know that you didn't go to bed at the weekend and you were out partying. So what do you expect is all I can say. Of course, I'm far more compassionate than that. But there is the reality versus the truth. So yes, it's very interesting. Nicole, I think that brings us into another conversation about the journey starts here as a platform because it is about finding who's right for you, and it is about being compassionate to each other as different types of therapists. Just because your insurance certificate says this doesn't mean you're going to operate in the same way as the other person, and that's really nuanced, and it's about personal approaches, and it's completely the opposite to AI. I do think sometimes we don't see that so much. We expect everybody to be following the same rules, and it's very rigid. And the world doesn't work like that. So I thank you again for being open about that because I have also been very judged by my somewhat maverick ways sometimes. I actually was in a French community of sophrologists, and my French is appalling, and I got taken out by these some people because my language was wrong, and I was like, "Gosh, I haven't even got the language right." And then how do you do? This is a very European method. It's very, very important in France. It started in Spain. It's very embedded in Switzerland, and then I'm out on the global stage saying, "Let's take this method and make it global." And there's a real tension around that as well. So yeah, I feel you and I hear you. Um, can I ask you one of the most interesting questions that I had for you today is why is inner work so important? Would you mind summarizing that, please?
Inner work is when you start discovering who you are, who you truly are. I often give this analogy that every single person is a mountain, a massive mountain, the Everest. But this mountain is covered by a lot of fog. And as a result of this fog, you don't get to see the full picture. So as a result of this fog, you think that your mountain might be 10% of what it actually is. And as a result of this, you start operating just in the part that you see. Now, when you do the inner work, what you start doing is you start removing some of the fog. And then you start saying, like, holy shit, this is so big. I am so much more than this 10% that I was operating from. Now, why is it important for you to do that? It always comes back down to one big question. I think it's the biggest question, which is why are we here? Why are we here? And a lot of people think that why am I here has to be, defined by my profession, my career, my purpose, what's my big why, my own unique personal big why. But I go a step even further where I say, forget about your unique why. What's the why of humans? Why are we here? What's the point of this specific experience? And everybody, that is a journey, that is a very individual journey to be able to get there. But I'll give you the answer. The very big why is is actually that we're here to evolve. That is the purpose of our existence, is that we as humans are here to evolve in a mental way, in a physical way, in a spiritual way, to grow. That is the point of our existence. Now, however that growth comes to you, that is very individual, you know. But if that is the point, my point is to grow, then how can I engage in this growth if I only have access to the 10% of me? Journey would not exist today if it wasn't for the inner work that I've done. I wouldn't have this incredible marriage to my husband if it wasn't for the work, the inner work that I've done. I wouldn't be the daughter that I am. I certainly 100 and million% would not be the therapist that I am today if it wasn't for this inner growth. I have discovered things inside of me that have completely surprised me. And anyone that says no to inner growth is is scared. That's it. That's all. And people might say, "Oh, it's fine, I can grow on my own." And yes, you can. Therapy and coaching is not for everybody. It's one way of getting into this inner growth. It's one way of doing the inner work. There are plenty of other ways as well. Now, it's a hell of a way. It's a great way. It's like you have, you know, your personal, you know, it's like going to the gym. Yeah, you can go to the gym and like exercise on the machines, but what if I told you, all right, you can still go to the same gym and be with like a PT that like counts with you, tells you, you know, pays attention to your form and all of that. That stuff is important. But the whole point again, if, is for you to grow. And how can you do that when you don't process the traumas, when you don't learn how to sit with emotions, when you don't have this like clear vision of your mountain, you will continue operating from a very, very, very small fraction. So my main message was and will continue to be to encourage people to do this inner growth, because my God, how better do we become as just already as an individual human, and then in your own little family, and then in your own friendship group and society and community. It's it's just it's too beautiful not to be done.
It's also a bit like not really using all of the facilities that you've got. It's a bit like having a 10-bedroom house and only ever going in one room. Why wouldn't you
100%.
make access of all of this incredible stuff? And I too, it was the biggest revelation to me when I realized I wasn't just a giant head attached to a body that didn't do anything. When I realized my mind and my body was connected, but I also had a physical, mental, emotional, and a spiritual place to hang out. I'm like, this is just the most amazing, exciting thing in the world. It changed everything for me. So, yes, I agree. Please do the inner work. Anybody listening, do it however you need to do it, whether it's with a coach, an advisor, a therapist, an AI chatbot. If you think that's going to work for you, let us know. But yes, we really do it. We do need to do it. And I think burnout, which we haven't talked about today, is an absolute crisis of passion and purpose. I see people who lose the passion and purpose. Who am I and what am I meant to be doing? And when they can't answer those questions, they get burnt out because they just basically they evaporate. And that is so, so important. And it's a huge piece of work that I do with people. Nicole, for people listening today, can you please tell them if they are a coach or a therapist, what they should do next? And if they are somebody looking to do the inner work, what they should do next then as well?
Well, if you're a therapist or a coach, what I would love for you to do next is to check out our website, journeystartshere.com, and to see if Journey is the right type of companion um, to accompany you as you want to grow in your career. I want to say this, it's not going to be for everybody. We're also a bit, you know, I sit with everybody that I meet. There are no members on the platform that I have not sat with, that I don't really understand, you know, who they are as therapists and coaches and how they want to grow. And so the community has been really curated you know, has been curated for a community that is looking to grow, right? So I come back to this point. The registration is very easy. You know, it takes 2 minutes, and then after that, you know, we review your application, we get on the call, you and I, and from there we decide, you know, which membership plan suits you best. And then from there, you know, you're part of the community. You get access to all of our invitation, our business opportunities. So it's I want you to see it as this, you're a business expense that is worth so much more than the $39 that we are offering. So this is yeah, that is my message for therapists and coaches. My message for the general public, which I think you have quite a lot of people listening to, is to not be afraid to dive in and to discover your immensity. A lot of the time, people think that they're afraid of failing, but actually, people are afraid of succeeding, and people are afraid of seeing their grandiosity and seeing how big and how magnificent they are. And that fear often comes from being afraid of opening doors that have been closed for a very long time and worrying that there are big monsters, waiting for them on the other side. Actually, the only person that is waiting for you on the other side is very often the little younger version of you that is sitting in a corner, a bit sad, a bit afraid, a bit, just a bit in need of an adult that just comes in and rescues that person. And once you do that, you get to reconnect with that essence. There's nothing that you can do after that. There's really nothing. So get excited about that journey. Really
Yeah.
do.
It's amazing. And I've been there myself and I've accompanied many clients through that. And there is nothing to be afraid of. You have only your best self to meet. And if you really knew how powerful you were, you'd get going straight away. Nicole,
Yeah.
thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. If
Thank
anybody would
you.
like to check out either of our LinkedIn profiles, please go ahead. Nicole has shared the website Journey Starts Here. To connect with me, it's lindsayfrancis.co.uk, Lindsay with an E, Francis with an E. And until next time, thank you very much.